Welcome to Uncopyable Women in Business. I'm Kay Miller, also known as Muffler Mama. I've been the #1 salesperson in a male-dominated industry, a successful entrepreneur for over 30 years, and now my mission is to help you build a business and brand nobody else can compete with. If you're ready to break out of the pack and create your own uncopyable advantage, stay tuned. My guests and I are here to help. Today's guest is Dawn Grooters. Dawn is the founder of Broken Vessel Sales Solutions and the host of Inside Gift and Home podcast. After a successful career as a field rep, Dawn transitioned into inside sales following the heartbreaking loss of her son, turning her personal journey into a mission to help others sell with empathy, purpose, and balance. With over 20 years in the gift and home industry, she now teaches sales professionals how to grow revenue and relationships without burning out or selling out. Dawn, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Kay. I really am glad to be here.
The feeling is definitely mutual. I'm touched by your story, and we, of course, have to hear this backstory that any parent listening, if they haven't been through it, luckily I haven't, probably cannot imagine what that would be like to lose a child. But you took that and made some changes that never would have happened without that tragedy.
Yeah.
I'd like you to just start with that. What happened before? You can tell us where you started and then that transition. Really, this is all about you. So I'll let you take over.
Yeah. Thank you. So yes, I started my career after graduating college. I was a buyer. So I had graduated with a fashion design major and fashion merchandising, went into the buying world, was a buyer for about 6 years and was interested in sales because I worked with sales reps as a buyer and moved into a field sales rep job. So I traveled the state of Iowa selling products from a variety of different brands to retailers. And so I loved that job. I got to not be in an office anymore. I got to visit amazing retailers, see their stores. I love that kind of product. And so I got to do that for about 3 years and really enjoyed that job. Worked really hard at it and was successful in it. And then I was out on the road one day and my friend called to tell me that one of my children, my son, was in the hospital and it didn't look good. And so I got in the car and I drove, and about halfway through my drive, my husband called to tell me that our son had passed away. It was completely unexpected. Our son was 11 and a half months old, had just started walking, and we lost him.
I just have to say, I'm so sorry again. We're talking about that's just something no parent should ever have to go through.
Yeah. And it was something that you never expect to have to go through that. And when it happened, luckily, I was grounded in my faith, prayed out to God to save him. That was not the answer that he provided, but I also had faith that no matter what was going to happen, he would take care of us. And after that happened, I had a 3.5-year-old son as well. And I knew that I didn't want to go back out on the road, that I couldn't do that anymore. I wanted to be at home. I needed to heal. I needed to strengthen my faith and be home for my family. I also found out about a month and a half later that I was pregnant with our daughter, who's now 13. And so I knew I didn't want to go out on the road. So I went to my manager at the time and said, I'm going to have to quit. I don't want to go out on the road. And she had said, we're thinking about starting inside sales. Would you want to do that? And I was like, it keeps me at home. It's sales. I still get to talk to retailers. I'll give it a try. It was just literally, I'll give it a try and see what happens. They gave me a list of customers. I had a phone and I had a computer. And so I started making phone calls. Didn't have any training on how to do it. I just knew from my experience with retailers, I knew what their stores looked like and I knew how to build relationships with them. And so I kind of started to transfer those skills to inside sales. So I started calling them. I would ask them questions. I like to ask a lot of questions. I'd be like, what's working in your store? How's traffic? Just building up that rapport with them. I also made a lot of mistakes in all of that where people hung up on me. They like a lot of different things. I made a lot of mistakes, but learned from them. I'm a quick learner. And so I learned what not to do and what to do and started to generate success in. burnout. I started to have customers calling me back. I had customers reaching out to me. I was building sales and ended up within a couple years writing $1 million of sales just through calling customers on the phone. So I had success with that and built on that. And then I did inside sales for 7 years. Just because I was at home, I was raising my kids at home. They didn't have to go to daycare anymore. So I had my daughter on my lap when I was writing emails, and when she was taking naps, I was calling customers. And so I was at home enjoying the fact that I could talk to retailers, sell them products that I still loved and enjoyed, but able to do it from home. And so I did that for about 7 years, moved into some key accounts. And then in 2020, the company I worked for let me go during COVID. And then that's when I decided I was going to start my business. And I had a lot of customers and clients that were like, hey, you know how to talk to people over the phone. Can you help me? So that's how my business started.
Good for you.
Yeah.
On a lot of levels. I took a few notes, as you could probably see. First of all, I've been in sales, marketing, always on the selling end my whole life of my career. But you went from being buyer to being a sales rep. So you obviously were okay with that and probably had a lot of insights because you have had people call on you and sell you. When you say you failed some because you were hung up on, one of the things I like to say is you have succeeded if you get hung up on, because that is something you have to go through. And then you have to, even more importantly, pick up the phone again. So you're hung up on, it's not the end of the world. And of course, in your situation, you're probably like, that's not the end of the world is an understatement.
Absolutely.
Hang up on me all the time. I don't care. So maybe that built some toughness in you, but you had the perspective of a buyer. Yes. And then you had the resilience to call people on the phone, cold calls. And then COVID, of course, were the calls that you made, were they cold calls, some of them, or were you had a list of existing accounts? How did that work?
Yeah, usually it was existing accounts that maybe had ordered, but they were dormant. So they were 1 year, 2 years dormant. So sometimes it was that, sometimes it was an open territory. So the sales rep that was in that territory left, went to another job or left for some reason. And so in the meantime of hiring a new person, I would call on those retailers to say, during this transition, I'm going to be here to take care of you. So we're not losing sales while a rep is not in that territory. So it was a variety of different projects that I worked on when I was doing inside sales.
As far as skills that you feel like made you more successful at connecting, I know you said you asked a lot of questions. That is the biggest problem I see, or at least one of them. So I'll say 3 different ones that sometimes come into mind, but it sounds so obvious, and yet we like to talk. I'm also a naturally curious person. I consider myself to be, but how do you get yourself to really ask questions and develop the rapport that gets them to answer them? Do you have any phrases or questions or methods that you can share?
So a lot of the things when it comes to inside sales, one, social media is really big right now. So I think it's always good to research that customer first. I want to see what they're posting on their social media to see maybe what collections they're purchasing. Maybe they bought a new candle line, or I want to learn about that customer. And then I can ask questions from there. That's one way to do it, is to research, but then ask those questions. And I start with usually like an overlying question. And I will say like a main question. So how is business going? And then I'll dig a little deeper into some more clarifying questions and say, okay, so if business is going well, what's working? What are the categories that your consumers are purchasing? And then if they'll tell me some categories, and then I'll say, okay, so is the price points, are the price points good for you? Or is there a certain price point you like to stick within those categories? So it gives me then asking those questions gives me the answers to direct them to the right product. So if I don't ask those questions, I might just go in there and start talking and sell them something they don't even need or want, or that would sell for them. So I have to ask those questions first to direct them to the right product, because that phone call is so short that I need to get to the right product quicker. And so by asking those questions, I get there.
You need to get to know that person. It's always a little finesse as to where you stop at the nice to get to know you.
Yes.
How's business, whatever, and then drilling down. But we all have that skill. We all have that skill, I believe, if we just tune into that.
Yes.
I love your comment about calling on dormant accounts. We call the target market, your ideal target market is your moose.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times people who are in sales, marketing, business owners are looking out in the world, looking on social media, wherever. Where is our moose? Where are they congregated? Your current customers are your very best moose.
Yes.
So if someone's dormant, they've already done business with you. Maybe not personally, but they know your company, you know your product line. They've said good on you.
Yes. Yeah. And those are obviously there's a reason why they didn't buy again. It could be a really simple reason. They ran out of inventory and didn't realize they ran out of inventory and didn't buy. It could be that they had a horrible experience, but you don't know unless you call and ask. And so that's one of the ways to find out, like, is there an issue within a company? Is there an issue with a product? By calling and asking. And you're not going to ever get that feedback if you don't call and ask.
You sound like you really know a lot about sales and you should help others. Wait a minute, you do.
Yes, I do.
We're going to get to that. But those are all very wise observations. We talked a little bit about AI before the call. How much do you use it? And you said all the time.
Yeah.
So do I. Like for you, in the past, I would have had to do more research, even though you sent me information. I still want to learn more. And just go to AI. I can find so much. So I suppose for you, as you are selling and helping your new people, how does AI play into that?
Yeah, we use AI a lot. I think it is really helpful for when we are researching customers because I train people like before you even make the phone call, you should research the customer. So whether it's through their social media, putting in their name and their business, you're going to find out what social media handles they have, what's on their website. If they have a website, what products do they sell? What brands do they sell? All of that information is really helpful for us then to go in and say, okay, maybe they have this candle line, but we have this candle line of accessories that would work well with it. So we can actually speak to that when we're on the phone call to say, you know what, it looks like you've purchased on your website. It shows that you've purchased candle line X. And we have this candle line of accessories that complements it really well. So it helps us then to know more about that customer. So again, we're more targeting what we're selling because we can't just throw a catalog at them or throw a bunch of products at them and expect them to choose something right away. That's not going to work. But this gives us a little bit more target to say, oh yeah, okay, this is going to work for us. Maybe we'll take a look at this and then we can move forward with trying to close the sale.
I noticed as I was researching you, I went to your website. And I think in a very lovely way, you talk about your path and losing your son, how that's affected you. Of course, it's got to affect every part of you all the time. But I like the fact that you do have a story, a meaningful story that sets you apart, makes you uncopyable. It's something you never would have chosen, obviously, but it does separate you from other people, and it gives you the chance to tell people, even on your website, what kind of a person you are, what that meant to you, how you had to call on your faith, and how that caused you to pivot. We'll say pivot, our favorite word.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that being personal tells me that you are also willing to reveal some of what you are and what's important to you. That's great. That really is important in rapport, don't you think?
Yes, absolutely. And that was something I think I found unexpectedly in building rapport with the customers that I would call. There was one phone call that I had done where I called a lady. It was about candles, that I was selling some candles. And you could tell that she was outside, like the wind was blowing through her phone. And I said, is this a good time for you? And I'm actually at my son's gravesite. And I just what you did, I sunk down in my chair and I said, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. I'll give you a call back another time. And she said, no, that's okay. You can tell me what you need to tell me. And I just said, why don't you just tell me about your son? And so she started to tell me about her son. And then I ended up telling her about my son and that I had lost him. And we both just sat there it wasn't about candles anymore. It was about being human, two brokenhearted moms that experienced different, our experiences were different, but we were two brokenhearted moms that we could share. We ended up ending the call. I've got tears running down my face, and I ended up calling her later more about candles. But that moment was when I realized this was something that I could still connect with someone over the phone. I could build that relationship in a way that I don't know that I realized it before that phone call. And it's not phone numbers. it was never really phone numbers to me, but it's not just dialing phone numbers. There's people, they all have stories. They all need to build relationships with people. And so that was my goal in connecting with those people, not to just sell them product.
You did so many things right there, and hopefully I've made some notes I can remember. But one thing I like, and this is a little controversial, is this a good time for you? I like to ask that question. Some people say no, just get right in there because you may never have a chance. I think it's rude. And if someone calls me and starts saying stuff when I don't have time, first of all, why did I pick up the phone?
Yeah.
But really, I like that question of, do you have time? So she said, here's where I am. And she said, but you can talk to me about your candles. The first thing you didn't do is when she said, I lost my child, you didn't say, oh, I did too.
Yeah, no.
You said, let's not talk about candles. Let's talk about your son. But you honored her by asking her first. I think that's wonderful. Yeah. And so then you, of course, did have more of a relationship than you may have not talked about candles till later, but you had that and then had that bond. So I like those few points I made are very good or very strong. You did good.
And I will say, I don't always say, is this a good time? But I also try to pick up on cues like that you can hear. So I heard the wind going through that. So if you're outside, maybe you're carrying groceries. And even though she answered a phone, like there's a time for me to be able to have a conversation. And sometimes there's not. And it would be a disservice for me to be like, hey, I'm going to sell you all these candles while your hands are full of groceries or something like that. So it's paying attention to those cues. And that's why I asked that question.
Well, that's a good point, because I think so much of sales is reading the other person, the situation. Yes. So they might, if they sound like they've got all the time in the world, you might just start talking. But if they're rushed or something's going on or what, you don't want to start there.
Exactly. Or you hear like a store full of people. So that's not a good time for me to try and sell more candles.
Exactly. So you had a few things that we could discuss. One is years on the phone making calls to retailers, which we talked about. The second one, which is so incredibly important, and I think people think of this as a soft skill that you don't absolutely need for sales, but it is the mindset shift. And that is so important. We're a big golfing family. We watch golf all the time. And so many times the golfers will say, oh, I've got to work with my mental coach or my psychologist, my sports psychologist. So tell me about the mindset shift that you've made and how we can tap into that too.
Yeah. So I think like mindset is huge when it comes to inside sales. So when someone hangs up on you or you get to have a negative phone call or you have a setback or an obstacle to overcome, it can be really easy to, like you said before, not pick up the phone. And so the mindset shift has to happen in how you're providing the value to those people. It's not some people like, I don't want to bug them. I don't want to nag them. It's not that. If you have value to provide for them, then that phone call is going to be valuable to them. So whether it's a promotion that you're going to tell them about so saves them money or new product that's going to sell really well in their stores, those are value points. And so instead of looking at it in the mindset shift or the mindset of I'm nagging them, I'm bugging them, switch that mindset to what is the value you're going to provide? Call to provide value to them. And I think that's a really important shift in their minds. And then in a sales rep mind, especially today, I feel like the way my story has happened, I didn't anticipate any of this, how it would come up. But like being a field sales rep, I understand how burnt out you can be. Like when I was a field rep, I was striving and I was burnt out and a lot of hours on the road. And I had 2 small kids at the time and all of that. And I wish I would have known then what I know now in how I could have worked differently. But then when my son passed away and I was in inside sales and I could call so many more customers and reach so many more customers just by using my phone and using a CRM and all the tools, I was able to reach so many more customers. So then I had more customers that were buying. And so when I learned how to do outside sales and be a field sales rep and then do inside sales, that's where I'm like, oh, you could do so much more as a field sales rep by combining both, by making the phone calls to customers and visiting. You still want to visit those customers that want you in the store. You still want to visit your top customers. You still want to do that. but you don't have to spend all your time and get so burnt out by doing that. So that you could do some phone calls and you could reach more customers and grow your sales in that way. And so that's a huge mindset shift going on right now. And we've really learned a lot of that since COVID.
Oh, yes. COVID was a bane to many, but a boon for Zoom.
Yes, true.
We're on Zoom right now. And
yes.
Everybody uses Zoom all the time, but where was Zoom before COVID?
Yeah.
I'm sure Zoom is saying, thank you, COVID.
Yes.
Compared to Zoom, I'm sure making phone calls was more difficult in some ways. You seem like you're very at ease in front of the camera. Do you do a lot of Zoom? Do you recommend using Zoom?
So I think it's important with some customers. So some customers, I would say since COVID too, some people are zoomed out as well. So I think it's meeting the customer where they're at. So if you have a customer that's interested in this product, can you share more details? If it's not a customer that wants you to come into their store, then doing a Zoom and look at this handbag and you can open it up and you can see here's a zipper pocket and you can show more products. So if your customer's open to that, absolutely do Zooms. And I've found that if you do a Zoom call with a customer, your order totals could be a little bit higher because they're like, okay, I get to see more of the product that way than just a phone call. But still, anybody, especially in sales right now, you will take what you can get. So if it's a $500 order or an $800 order or a $1,000 order, you will take what you can get, even though things are customers are ordering a little bit lighter right now. You still will take that and you will help them and get them the best product and give them the value, even if it's a $500 order.
Not everyone is comfortable on Zoom, but if you are in sales, you should force yourself to learn how to use Zoom. I like your point that you can show the product much more easily, but also the connection that you get eyeball to eyeball is, to me, 100 times better than being on the phone. But your customer, if they don't want it, they are the boss.
Yes,
but I do talk to a lot of salespeople that say, oh, I don't feel comfortable on Zoom. Or Loom. Loom is something else I recommend. Interesting take on that from a recent guest. Her name is Ruth Manschreck. So look up that episode. But not everyone's comfortable, but there are definitely advantages to Zoom.
Yeah.
I'm sure the economy right now, it is June 2025.
Yes.
With the tariff situation, I have a lot of customers just what the heck's going on and businesses are changing. We don't know how this is all going to shake out.
No.
But we're living through it. It's just like COVID. We lived through it. Here we are. Made it through. So I'm sure that's a challenge for you too.
Yes, it is. There's several vendors that I talk to that they're struggling through tariffs and trying to do what they can do. And so we're living through it. There's no right answer. Not every vendor is going to handle it the exact same way, and that's okay. It's trying to communicate that to the retailers. This is where we're at. This is how we're handling it. And then the retailers on their end have to handle it in the best way they can as well. And there's no one right way either.
What? There's one right way. It's a right way. I know what you've been listening to. So one of the things that you said is that we could talk about, I think we just did. A strategy to double your impact without doubling your hours. Obviously, that has got to be on the phone. And I don't know, do you go out on the road? I know you train, and we got to talk about that in the next few minutes remaining, but do you yourself go out on the road selling it all, or do you do it all from home?
So for right now, mostly from home. I do have some retailers that I still check in with and things like that, but most of the time it's from home. We focus more on inside sales and provide that service for vendors as well. But I go to trade shows and things like that, so I do see retailers there as well.
Yeah, talk about efficiency. Trade shows, that's another controversial subject. My husband, in 1990, just to tell you how old we are, although he's 8 years older than me, wrote his first book. He wanted to call it the 9.5-minute sales call. And it was about trade shows. And we had a publisher like McNaughton & Gunn, a huge publisher. And they said, it's going to be called How to Get the Most Out of Trade Shows. That's really boring. But trade shows, efficient and effective way of connecting with clients. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, build relationships with them.
So let's talk about how people can get a hold of you, Dawn Grooters, and how you'd like to be connected with. And you have something that you offer for free. So why don't you talk about that? And as you're listening, remember all these notes will be in the show notes, or all the links.
Yes. So you can connect with me on my website. It's brokenvesselsales.com. And it has all the services that we provide on there. It also has the podcast for Inside Gift and Home. But then also I'm on LinkedIn, Dawn Grooters, and then also on Instagram and Facebook as well. So you can always find me there. And yes, so one of the things that I wanted to offer to your audience as well is a free connect call with me, because I do like to connect with people. It's a free connect call. And so if you're interested, if you're a field sales rep and you're a little burnt out right now, I would love to connect with you to learn a little bit more about how we could maybe save 20 plus hours a month for you in using some inside sales skills, helping you get set up with a CRM, and then understanding who to call and who to go visit as well. And that's a Calendly link that Kay will put in the show notes.
That's right. Yeah. Sounds great. I love everything you've said. I think maybe there might have been something I didn't love, but most I loved it. Your philosophy, how you handle relationships and sales. I like to think of sales as helping. It sounds corny, but if you can find out what somebody wants, needs, and help them get it, or even better, help them get something they didn't even know was possible.
Yeah.
I love the Henry Ford quote. I probably overuse it. He says, if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. So people didn't know what cars were. Yeah. And on some level, our customers and prospects don't know the possibilities, even though they think they can go on the internet and learn it all. Or go to AI. No, you can't. You can't. You need us.
Yep.
So Dawn, is there anything that you want to close out with? Last few words of wisdom before we say over and out?
Yeah. No, thank you, one, for having me. But I also just think with sales, it's about relationships. It's about building that and adding value. And the more customers that we can connect with that add value and we're building those relationships, the better you're going to be able to be.
You summed it up very nicely. As a reminder, everything's going to be in the show notes. And I wanted to say thank you, Dawn. I'm so glad that we had this conversation. So thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Uncopyable Women in Business. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe, rate, and review the show. That helps me a lot. And be sure to visit the Moose Market at beuncopyable.com/store for more great uncopyable shortcuts. See you next time, and always remember to be uncopyable.